Hello, everyone, and welcome to the series of podcasts by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we are trying to explore and understand various optional subjects. Today, we have with us Bhavna ma'am, who has been guiding and mentoring students for last 2 decades. Welcome, ma'am. We are really glad to have you here. The whole intent of these series is actually to understand through the lens of the aspirants who are yet to make a decision about their optional subjects. Let's start from the very beginning, ma'am. Who all are the aspirants who can opt for maths optional subject? Does it require some background? Do they need to have an engineering degree or have studied maths optional in the undergraduation? Or what is the ideal profile of a person? Can anyone take maths optional? Or
So, Aditi, a student must have studied maths in undergraduate program for sure. Whether it is a BSc maths honors or a BSc general degree or an engineering degree of any discipline, but you cannot just have maths till class 12th and try to opt for maths optional. The reason being the syllabus is structured in such a way that you require some amount of connectivity during the last 3, 4, 5 years of your undergrad and postgrad studies before you can take maths optional. So ideally, a student must have studied maths at some point of time in the undergrad level, whether it is 2 papers or whether it is an honors degree. Apart from that, who is an ideal candidate for maths? So you need, basically, there are a few things that you have to keep in mind. Number one, you must have studied maths. But then a lot of people in our country are also studying maths because they're told to study maths. They're told that maths is very beneficial, it's scoring and so on. That's not enough to choose maths optional. You must have a flair for the subject. Flair means that you must be ready to put in the required amount of effort that is required to do well in maths. You have to have a lot of practice. You have to have, there shouldn't be any phobia of maths. And as we know, I've come across a lot of people who don't really appreciate maths at its root level. So those students should not opt for it just because they hear things like it's scoring or whatever. So you should have a flair for it. You should have studied it at undergrad level. And also the third and most important thing is, apart from having a flair, you must be ready to put in the work that is required to do well in this paper. It's true for any optional, but maths for sure. You cannot not put in the effort from your end, which is either by practicing or giving tests once the syllabus has been done, and being regular in touch with the subject. So that is important.
ma'am, like you said, maths is a very scoring optional. We understand that maths has a very static syllabus. It has a objectivity as compared to other optional subjects that are there. Do you think that this brings mathematics, gives the maths optional students a bit of scoring edge over the people who have opted for other optionals because it takes out subjectivity from the whole picture?
Yeah, definitely maths is scoring because like you said, it's a static syllabus. We know the 13 topics that are going to be asked. The pattern is also kind of revealed over the past few years. So you would know what kind of 10 markers are asked, what kind of 15 markers are asked. And syllabus, I would not comment whether it is less or huge. It is basically undergrad level, so a BSc Maths Honours degree. So it does have 13 topics, but it is static. And once you prepare those topics thoroughly, then because there is no subjectivity, like you said, the marks can be on the higher side. Having said that, it's not enough just to give the correct answer. It's also very important to be able to present the answer nicely. So the answer sheet is the medium between you and the examiner. Just the fact that you know the answer and examiner would give you full marks, that's not going to happen. So you really require to develop a style of presentation. You must know how to answer stepwise. You must know how to steal marks. So to get a full 10 on 10, for example, just getting the correct answer, say it's a volume question or something, saying that the volume is 54 centimeter cube is not enough. How have you approached? What is your, what are the formulae that you have applied? Is there any theorem? Is there any lemma? Is there any supporting argument that you can give? There are topics where you require to justify, are you using associative law here? How do you guarantee there's something called an identity element here? So all that justification has to be part and parcel of your answer. It cannot just be a blunt, this is the question, this is the answer. You have to present the answer in steps and be able to explain it to the examiner how you have reached to that particular solution.
Ma'am, also, like you have taught at prestigious institutes like St. Stephen JMC. You have yourself been an alumni of IIT Delhi. So, how now you're teaching to students who are preparing for competitive exams, UPSC particularly. What is the difference between the orientation of the students in these both settings? Like, how does math students a student who is studying it in academics, and how does a maths optional student who is studying it for UPSC differ? What is the difference in the mindset that you notice, and or that has to be there in the students?
See, number one thing is that when you are preparing a student in a college for a degree course, whether it's engineering or it is nowadays everywhere is semester system. Earlier when I was teaching, there was also annual mode. So one whole year you're teaching. Now it is one whole semester you're teaching, and you're teaching, for example, let's pick up algebra. So if I'm teaching them algebra for the whole semester, then end of the semester, there'll only be an algebra paper that will happen. Right? A person who's teaching analysis will only have an analysis paper. So they'll have 3, 4, 5 papers towards the end of the semester. And each one of them will concentrate specifically on these topics. So they'll go in-depth analysis of that particular topic, because there'll be a full 100-mark paper only on algebra, only on analysis, and so on and so forth. Now, and so therefore, obviously, in-depth analysis has to be done. And also a person who's doing it as an academic degree, we hope that the student goes up to do masters in maths and then research in maths and PhD. So there has to be an in-depth analysis, like nothing can be left, So even if things are not quote unquote askable for the exam point of view, they have to still be introduced in the class so that the student is aware of what are the other applications and stuff. Coming to a competitive exam like UPSC, specifically UPSC, the entire syllabus is going to be asked in one go in the form of 2 papers, which also happen on the same day finally. So it's like giving 18 papers of graduation together on a single day. So you cannot expect to have the same in-depth analysis that is going to be with a semester paper. Also, this gives us a lot of choice. So even though you cannot leave out any topic, you can still work on your strengths in such a way that you're able to opt out of those questions which you think you are not so great at. So competitive exam requires a completely different skill set. Number one, you have to remember everything together. So it's not like you give a semester paper, then you forget about it and, work on the other paper and so on. You'll have to remember everything together. So the syllabus moves from abstract algebra to differential equations to vector analysis to physics. So the jump has to be very, very quick. You cannot keep thinking about that one particular question. You have to quickly go from one thing to another in a matter of seconds, because one question is over. Now you have to really change your thinking completely, and whether you're answering an abstract question or are you answering a numerical question and so on. So it has to be very quick thinking. So that is one disadvantage, because everything comes together. The advantage, like I said, is it gives you a kind of a choice that yes, you can build up your strengths in such a way that when you're opting for questions, you do opt for questions that you know that you are best at. And other topics can then be, therefore, taken only if they come as compulsory questions, or only when they come as part and parcel of a question that you are attempting. So a few topics in the syllabus can be done in such a way that you don't really deep dive into it. Whereas there are certain other topics that you fully concentrate on, like know them like the back of your hand, so that any question that comes from that, you should be able to attempt. And that becomes your USP. That becomes the reason why you choose a particular question. So, for example, if a student has prepared, let's say, modern algebra very well, then what he'll do in the exam is that look at a question, modern algebra questions he's very sure of, whatever is clubbed with that, so modern algebra is coming with, say, calculus and numerical. So calculus and numerical questions, depending on his or her expertise, will be the deciding factor, because algebra, he would be like, I'm fully sure that I'll be able to attempt a question. So you can really have a kind of a hierarchy or kind of a leveling of the papers in such a way that I know about 50-60% of the syllabus very well, and remaining, I know it, but I'm not deep diving into it. So I know it from the basis of what is generally asked in the exam and what is your level of expertise in that particular thing.
Could you walk us through, like, how are your classes structured? Like, conventionally, how we have been studying maths, like you'll be taking up theories in the theory part in the classroom, and then the student would be doing like questions there, or you would be taking certain examples in your class, and then rest is their practice. Like, how does it actually, the structure of your classes?
Okay, so even though I expect students to have a flair for maths and studied some amount of maths in college, we don't take it for granted that they have any knowledge of maths in that sense. All I expect them to know is the basics, which are like class 11th, 12th, formulae and everything. So the way classes are conducted is that if I pick up a particular topic, then I start from absolute zero level there, start with the introduction of the topic. Where is it required? What is it? So guiding factor is obviously the syllabus, okay, and the PYQs. So you keep that in mind to introduce the topic. And then I teach, it's a 2.5 hour to 3 hour kind of a class. So you walk through, and there is actually not a lot of difference between theory and numericals. Let me clarify. So when you do theory well enough, numerical students themselves feel equipped enough to solve it themselves, So the whole idea is to teach the foundation so well that they feel empowered to do the questions. So what I'll do is I'll teach the particular topic, then take up 1 or 2 kind of questions, do them in the class, make them actually do it in the class with me. So we walk through it together. And then at end of every chapter, there is an assignment that's given. So there are booklets that are given to the students, which are my own handwritten booklets, and maths is a static syllabus. And when I say my own, they're not my answers. I've obviously referred to different books. So it's not one particular book that I will follow. I will, for a topic, follow 4 to 5 different books. Whatever I feel is good in one book, I will pick that up. Some questions, I will completely develop them on my own, like how I think the visualization should have happened, how the stepwise. So the answers are not written in a paragraph form, they're written stepwise. And most of the steps will have a heading. So the students know that what we are doing really in this. The objective is very clear, that in this we are trying to find, say, the subsidiary equations. Now we are trying to find the auxiliary equations. Now we are finding one solution. Now we are finding another one. Now we're checking for the independence, and then say the final answer is coming. I'm just giving you an example. So the steps are discussed in the class so thoroughly that end of the class, when they're given an assignment, which is with almost every chapter, there's an assignment at the end of the this thing. So they attempt it, and the next day we take up doubts. I ask them if there's any doubt about it, and so it's a very it's a process which happens in continuum. So today I've taught something, I've taken up 1 or 2 sample questions, and I've given them homework. Then they come back. So it's a very school type structure, if I might say, because they have to come up with the answers the next day. Otherwise, I can't keep teaching. See, I feel that the relationship between a student and a teacher has to be like a balanced 50-50 kind of a thing. I can do my work 100%, but you cannot expect that whatever is done in the class is enough. You have to go back home and invest the same amount of time. So if I'm taking a 2.5 hour class, I would expect you to also put in 2.5 hours. And in those 2.5 hours, about 1 hour, 1.5 hours should go in revising what was taught. Okay, because in the class you tend to repeat and you tend to go slow because everybody is doing it for the first time. If you revise it the same day, then it should take you about 1.5 hours to revise. Remaining 1 hour, you should do practice questions, which are tailor-made assignments which have been given to them. And then sometimes I'm able to tell them that today, based on this class and say the previous class, PYQs from this can also be done. So depending on the bandwidth of the students, I tell them whether 5 years or 10 years, 15 years, you can go as back as you can, possibly with the kind of time that you have with you, and do the PYQs also. So the next day when they come, we end up discussing the PYQs. If there are still any doubts pending, if there's any other clarification or any other concept that I think they're not really catching up on, then I do a recap of that. Then they go back again. So it's a very, so the revision also keeps happening, with the classes if the student is regular enough. So the booklets are given, assignment is given, PYQs appropriately are suggested that, when can you, now are you ready to do PYQs? And so like that, it becomes a full structured kind of a program. So the students need to just keep doing that. One thing I would like to accentuate here is that the time that you end up revising the lecture is very important. This is not specifically just for maths optional, but for anything. See, when we watch a movie, say for example, and you come out of the exam hall and you of the movie hall and you ask me what the movie was all about, I can give you the gist of it in 5 minutes, 2 minutes, but I cannot narrate the entire 2.5 hours or 2 hours movie, right? But a 2.5 hour lecture, that's a lot of concentration and focus that is required. So students do struggle through that sometimes. But if you don't revise it almost immediately, and by almost immediately, there is say a 4 hour window or an 8 hour window or a 12 hour window within which the revision has to happen. because then you are able to connect it with what happened in the morning. So my classes will happen in the morning, 7:30 to 10:30. If the student is sitting, say, about 4 o'clock to revise, then he would know this is what we discussed in the morning. There'll be a lot of anecdotes that will come up, examples that I give in the class, a lot of connections. But if you postpone this to the next day, then not only one more class's work has gotten added, but you've also forgotten the fine nuances. So that makes all the difference. And all you're revising is what was written in the booklet. That's not enough. Booklet is only a percentage of work that is done in the class. The remaining is the execution part. You'll forget that. And so the revision within the first 4 hours, 8 hours, or 12 hours at the max. It cannot be postponed beyond that. So every day they have to go back home, revise, and come prepared the next class.
Ma'am, like you told about that they have to solve PYQs also. So what is the relevance of solving PYQs, particularly in maths, which has a fairly static syllabus? And how far should they go? Like 10, 15 years or even 20 years? How has the syllabus been? And what has the exam pattern? How has that evolved over the time?
So PYQs are very, very important. They, in fact, are the guiding force of how the syllabus should also be tackled with, because they would just write down the heading, isomorphisms, but we wouldn't know how much in isomorphism one has to do, and how much do you. So there are some similar topics like automorphism, if it's not written in the syllabus. But we know that questions which are based on isomorphisms can also be adapted to automorphisms. And therefore, the PYQs are a guiding force. You have to do PYQs. You can't start doing PYQs from day one. In some topics, so for example, when I teach linear programming, the day I finish simplex method, which takes me about 2 classes to finish, then they are open to do every PYQ starting from the history, they can go back 20 years and whatever questions have been asked in simplex method, because they're very repetitive. Every year there has to be a question on simplex method. Okay, every single year. So if they sit down and practice, they can go back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And important thing is to keep marking that. For example, a student says, no, I have GS also, I don't have time. So I tell them, okay, do only last 5 years right now, but keep a track of you only tackling last 5 years, so that the next revision you do, you can go back 5 years more. The third revision you do, you can go back 5 years more. If a student comes up and says, ma'am, I don't have GS, I'm only concentrating on my optional, then I tell them, okay, in one go only try and do 15 years of PYQs. And the next time you do, you go back another 10 years. Apart from this, students should also do forest services papers, because there is a lot of overlap. A question that is asked today in civil services can be asked in forest the next year, and vice versa. So there is no dearth of PYQs, and PYQs are very, very important for practice, topic-wise as well as when they are practiced in a sectional kind of a manner. So like I was saying, some topics are such that today I'm teaching something from, real analysis, cluster points, neighborhoods. You will not find a single PYQ based on it. So today you can't go back home and do PYQs. I have to guide you that, okay, wait for 1 week. When we finish sequences and series, which is a part of this topic, then now you can go back and try and do all the PYQs. So there are certain topics from which every day you can go back home and do PYQs, like differential equation, numerical analysis, and simplex linear programming. But there are other topics where you have to wait for some substantial amount of time before they can start looking at the PYQs. But they are very, very important. You have to sit down and do the PYQs on regular basis. And this is done during the course, during the duration of the course itself. You don't have to wait for the course to get over to start doing PYQs. I keep guiding them that this is the time you can start doing PYQs based on these topics.
Absolutely, ma'am. PYQs, even in GS and other optionals also, they play a very vital role. Also, ma'am, I would also like to ask you this thing, that maths, conventionally, we have been seeing that it has been awarded, like in schools and colleges, it is awarded like for stepwise methods. If you have done, even if you have not arrived at the correct answer, you're still awarded for the number of steps you have given correct, and all that sort. So what is actually the marking, and what sort of marking is followed in maths optional per se? How does an ideal paper which has a very good score look like? So what is the role of presentation in the maths paper, if you can guide students on that?
Okay, so in schools, marks are distributed, to be honest. So if you've written the correct answer, even if 1 or 2 steps are missing, generally teachers are generous, especially the board checking and all, they're very generous. But here we have to be very careful. UPSC is not going to distribute marks. You have to earn your marks, okay? And by earning your marks, I mean that just because you've arrived at the correct numerical answer does not mean you'll get full marks. Steps really make a lot of difference. What is your approach? Have you understood the question? If the question talks about a concept, have you defined that concept? So that word, the key words have to be picked up from the question. So for example, a very classic question almost every year they ask, find eigenvalues and eigenvectors of this matrix. Now, a student who's going with the mindset of marks will be given if I just get correct marks, will end up finding something called eigenvectors, eigenvalues, and full stop, and he would expect full marks. He would not get full marks. He would only get about 50 to 70% of the marks awarded to that question. Why? Because the question was about find the eigenvalues and eigenvectors, the key words being what is an eigenvalue, what is an eigenvector. So an ideal solution will be eigenvalue is defined as, you give the definition of that. Then you find eigenvalues. We find eigenvalues using something called characteristic polynomial. Then you say for this we use the characteristic polynomial, and you define what a characteristic polynomial is. Then you use it to find the numerical answer. Then you define what is an eigenvector. And then you find eigenvectors, and then you finish your question by giving the conclusion that the eigenvalues of this matrix are this, 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 with the corresponding eigenvectors, this, this, this. Not like bluntly I found something and examiner is not going to find where your answer is. You have to highlight it out for him. And like I said, your answer sheet is a medium through which you're communicating with the examiner. What are you trying to prove? You're trying to tell the examiner that this concept I know fully. But just by giving numerical answer, you're not able to explain that fact. If you want to tell him or her that you've understood the concept, your answer should reflect that what is the concept behind the question that has been asked. So it has to be written properly with stepwise distinction. And also when you ask me, are the marks awarded for steps? My general answer here is, have you written it in steps? If you write one paragraph, then the examiner is not going to find out, oh, till here you've done, so let me give you steps. They are not going to distribute or gift you marks. You write down step 1, let us find the eigenvalues. Step 2, this is a character, so even if you go wrong with some calculation somewhere, some amount of marks will be awarded to you for attempting how much you have attempted, provided you've written it in steps. So it's very important. Presentation skills are something that we work regularly in the class from day one. I make them write in the class. My booklets also reflect how I expect them to answer. And sometimes in the class we do, not sometimes, very regularly in the class, when they are solving, I go out for a round to check whether they're writing in steps or not. So the idea is not to raise your hand if you've got the answer, because I'm not interested in the answer. I'm interested in how have you achieved that answer. What are the steps you followed? Have you written down all steps? So I give them a understanding of how examiner is expecting the answer sheet to look like, and that is happening continuously in the classes.
Right, ma'am. For any student who is new to this optional, the person has a background in maths, is willing to take mathematics optional, and what should be their first approach towards the subject be like? Should they straight away walk into the foundation batch and just start whatever you are teaching, or there is some groundwork that they need to do beforehand itself, or should they be doing some certain easy topics themselves? Should they be looking at PYQs before starting the classes? What should actually the aspirant do? The first step after choosing, after deciding that maths is the optional that I want to opt for in UPSC, what is the first step that the aspirant needs to do?
See, whether they are about 10-15 days left for joining the batch, which would be the June batch, or the September batch where there's some months left or whatever. Whatever time you have, you should just concentrate on revising your basic formulae. By basic, I mean class 11, 12th, basic differentiation, basic integration, basic calculus, and matrices. Just the idea of all that. There's nothing called an easy topic. Even the easiest of the topics, if I facilitate them to do it, it'll be done in a faster and a better, more efficient manner. So they don't have to touch the syllabus as such, but they have to have the prerequisites. Prerequisites being differentiation, integration, matrices, basic calculus. Having said that, sometimes I now come across students who are they've decided maths as their optional depending on their flair, interest, passion, etc. But they haven't even looked at the syllabus. So I would request them to all download the syllabus at least, have a good idea of what is paper 1 all about, what is paper 2 all about. what they think is their understanding. They don't have to study anything, but for example, how familiar they are with the topics, how comfortable they feel they will be with a particular topic, so that when it is happening in the class, they know, are they starting from level 0, are they already at level 2 or 3, because most of them would have studied some amount of differential equations in college for sure before they come here. Not all of them would have studied abstract algebra, not all of them would have studied real analysis. Linear algebra, which the matrix is part of it, almost everybody would have seen it. So there is this level that they need to gauge for themselves. They don't have to do the topics themselves, but have the basics and picture before they come for the foundation class. I don't take it for granted that they know anything from college, to be honest. So it is done from level 0 onwards. We build up on it. But once the program starts, it's like it doesn't give you a break. So it is like a military program. Classes are about 6 to 7 times a week, and every single day there is work given. There has to be homework, and there has to be homework that is done. So the onus is on the students to do the homework and ask me doubts. And it's very, very, it is rigorous for sure, but it's also a complete program. If you do the foundation batch, then you have done the syllabus almost twice with me, because once I'm teaching, you've understood, but you've gone back home, done the questions yourselves, done the PYQs also. So there are registers that I suggest students to maintain for all the 13 topics, So instead of having one big thing where you don't know where everything is written, for each topic they can have a separate register where they can mark the PYQs also, the class booklets, questions, extra questions that they're doing, and so on and so forth. So it's quite a comprehensive program, I would say. It is rigorous, but it's also a lot of fun. I hope students also agree with that. But it is a lot of work for sure, but in a very healthy manner, I would say.
Ma'am, in general, UPSC aspirants are advised, even for GS also and optionals also, not to run behind too many sources. That actually adds to a lot of confusion, and then there's a difference of language in which the same thing has been said. And so that adds to more and more confusion in the students. How much is that actually applicable to maths, given that maths has an objective syllabus? Running behind more sources would more mean like you are exposing yourself to varied problems, right? So how does that differ for a student who has opted for maths optional?
Okay, so for maths also, as a way of suggesting books for every topic, I can honestly suggest 5 very good books, But each book, have you seen a maths book? The size of a maths book you would expect to be pretty thick. So there are books which are that thick, and I can suggest it and you can read it, but it is like giving them the entire universe to study, So the job of the teacher, I would feel, is to narrow it down, to make it as compact as possible, yet complete. So, these are not two contradictory statements. So I have made the booklets by referring to different sources just for this particular reason. Then when I give tests also, sometimes I change the language completely, so instead of it's a symbol that is, say, L being used for Laplace, I'll use completely different, so that, for a minute, it takes a lot of time. So differential equations, we generally use dy by dx. The exam would have dy by dt, or it'll have a dt by dz. So, for a second, a student is like, which is the independent variable here, which is the dependent. So that's the job of the person who's teaching them. So I genuinely feel they don't have to run after too many sources. If you do the booklets and if you do the PYQs, and if you still have a problem, a lot of students would come and say that, ma'am, for this particular topic, I feel that I need more. So then, depending on their need, I can suggest an appropriate book. I cannot give a generic answer that these are the 5 books you go and read. That just eases my job, my responsibility. But we also have a responsibility towards the students to make it as compact as possible, as contained as possible, Go to the library, study 10 books on abstract algebra. That makes the preparation complete theoretically, but it is impossible for a student to refer to so many sources. And the variety that has to be sort of practiced is very well done through the assignments and the PYQ. So we don't have to run after any other source, to be honest. If you just keep practicing thoroughly what is advised in the classes. 1 or 2 topics, I do suggest some books, and some portions of it, we also kind of, do it in the form of tutorials in the class. So after every 10-15 days, depending on what the topic is, we can also have a tutorial session where I just come in from a different book as compared to what we have been referring to, write down 10 questions, and then they're supposed to do it. And then we see how many questions are they able to attempt on the spot, provided, of course, they've prepared that topic first, So if your foundations are strong, then there is no way that you can stumble if any other question comes from that. So make your foundation so strong that no matter where the question is coming from, you will be able to attempt it with great confidence.
Ma'am, like you said that apart from your notes and other things, the students need not run behind other sources and all those things. But I would like to ask you about how has the trend of maths optional like evolved over past probably 1 decade, if you can explain, and how much does now a student actually needs to like practice? Can they have the leisure of actually leaving certain topics that they find are very difficult, given that there is no apparent choice in the exam? There are options that are have to be selectively actually opted for to be attempted. So there is no apparent choice in the exam. Can the student have the leisure of leaving the topic that they are weak at, or should they be working on their weaknesses, or more on their strengths? How should that happen?
So Aditi, I feel that's a very pertinent question, because a lot of students would be very selective about, I don't like this topic, can I leave it? This topic I'm not so great at. Now, my advice is, and it's a very, very sincere and a serious advice, you can't leave out any topic. Yet, not every topic you have to deep dive into. There are certain topics you can only look at the PYQs for reference and do only the portions which you think come more repeatedly. I also help them do this in the class. So we look at the PYQs together to see that, okay, a question on a particular topic has been asked only once in 25 years. So you don't have to really devote 5 days to do that particular thing, But if a question is going to come regularly, even if you're not aware of it, then I would suggest them that no matter what you do, just make sure that this type of question is on your fingertips. So they can't leave out any topic. Yet, I think the foundation course is all about identifying your strengths and your weaknesses. During the course of the duration of the program that is run, which is for about 7 months, a student identifies the weaknesses, strengths, works on their weaknesses, and strengthens their strong points. Towards the end, they have identified those 1 or 2 topics that they're not so great at. For that, you can do selective PYQ revision and only some basic questions, so that if there is a choice, that would be the first thing that you would leave out. But you would not leave out a complete chunk of a topic, So this is also very important, and it is all very tailor-made. So depending on when the students come and ask me, I'm able to tell them that this is non-negotiable. You can't just leave this topic at all. Whereas this topic is something that you can play around a little bit with, So a student very comfortably would be able to choose 5 questions that have to be attempted out of 8 if you follow the strategy. So it's important to work on your strengths and weaknesses, both, but identify what are the questions that you write better than everybody else. So that becomes your point, that is the question that I will definitely attempt, because the entire course of the answer sheet, the entire impression that you're trying to cast will not come from one individual question, but a chunk. So those topics you're great at, if you attempt them nicely, fully, properly, it really makes a lot of difference. So one more thing I would like to add here is that unlike other options, where they can make up an answer or something at times, here, if you don't know a particular thing, you have no idea. Like, for example, if there's a question on asymptotes and one has forgotten the formula of asymptotes, then you can't sit there and guess what an asymptote is going to look like. You'll have to leave that question. But, I also feel UPSC exam, any competitive exam also, even NET and JEE and everything, requires the presence of mind that one question can be left out. It's okay. A 10 marker, 15 marker. I know it's a lot of, it's like that entire question, I'm getting a 0. It's possible to leave out that question and still get a 300 plus score, if you do not lose focus on what is very important, which is the questions that you're attempting have to be written so fully, so completely, so comprehensively that every examiner is forced to, you have to force the examiner to give you the maximum marks awarded to that question. So 1 or 2 questions, if you leave, I've seen it in the past, students who got 300 plus scores are the ones who have left 1 or 2 questions in the exam. So you try to attempt the entire paper, in fact, you end up doing worse than what you would have ordinarily done. So it's all right. In maths, if you leave out 1 10 marker, 1 15 marker also, it's fine. But the remaining questions you have attempted very beautifully, completely, comprehensively, and you're forcing the examiner to give you marks, which are the maximum marks. So the strategy has to be really very different from how other optionals are, because it's very much possible feasible and it's awarded. Like, if students are given full marks in a question. So imagine a 20 marker and you get a 20 on 20. That's very much possible here. It's very much possible. So instead of running after every question, what questions you are attempting, you try to make them as complete as possible.
Also, ma'am, like we mentioned above, we have been comparing with other optionals also. I would also like to explore the aspect of that with other optionals, what students tend to do is, like if they join the June batch, right? So they complete one optional like till October, November. They'll revise it probably till December, January, finish it off, and then like keep it, pick it up after prelims has happened, right? Is that different for maths, given that maths requires constant practice, it needs to be in your routine, and if you leave it sometimes, and the other GS subjects are very current affairs oriented, they are very theoretical. So how does that has to be tackled on the part of the students? Do they need to have a regular practice, build it into their routine to practice maths every day so that they don't lose touch of it? And
So, Aditi, honestly speaking, anyone who's going to end up taking a maths optional at UPSC level will resonate with what I'm going to say right now. That one of the reasons why they've taken maths is because the other portions of GS are so theoretical and they require a lot of remembering and cramming and remembering the dates and everything. That maths acts like it's a and it is a break from their usual cramming up and remembering and everything. So people who would like maths, people who would choose maths would agree that doing maths, sometimes you're sitting for hours and you don't even realize that 2-3 hours have passed. So maths has to be formulated in your routine in such a way that once the class is over, so a 2.5 hour to 3 hour session, followed by another 2.5 hour, 3 hours. This is when a student is doing optional and GS together. I genuinely feel they should work on one aspect first, which is say prepare your optional and be done with. So for example, if I go with an ideal situation when I would want a student to be just concentrating on the optional and maybe one or two more other things, then a student must definitely be in touch with the syllabus during the course of the program, which is every day they should spend 2.5 hours to 3 hours revising. And once the course gets finished also, I'm able to sort of guide them about what the plan should be like for a second revision and a third revision. Optional must be revised at least 2-3 times before a student starts giving the prelims. So for example, if the prelims is in May, my advice is that when your batch 7-month program gets over, even after that, for some time, you reduce the duration. Don't do it for 6 hours, don't do it for so many hours, but every day you can take out 2 hours, and concentrate on a few topics which are your strength areas. So you only do them so well that at least your 50% of the topic gets revised. And depending on whether the student is, which year are you mentioning, then we can devise a way to be able to make them revise it at least 2-3 times before a student thinks that he or she is ready to give the prelims.
Talking about prelims, the prelims has just happened, it's over. The students who are like certain of writing mains this year or are hoping that they'll be writing mains this year, how should they right now approach maths optional, given that they have already done their foundation course, they have revised it like multiple times before? So how should their approach be? And also, if you can add towards the later part, the students who did not clear like prelims, but they have done with the multiple revisions, they have done with the foundation course, how their strategies needs to be from now on till mains 2026.
See, let's talk about 2026 first. So if students are giving mains this year, the result is not out. It'll still be some time before the results are out. But if you are a serious aspirant and if you feel that you're making the cut, you should start doing it right now, because there's hardly a time, 2.5 months window where you have to do your essay, your GS, and optional also. And if you've given the exam in May, I'm given the average, what students generally say, that since March at least, that's the max, they have stopped studying the optional. So they have to take out their books, they have to. And if you're saying that they've revised it already 2-3 times, they would know, as per what I suggest them, to prepare formula sheets, which we'll talk about a little later. But they should take out all their notes and everything and start looking at them section-wise or topic-wise. And so if you have about 2.5 months before the mains, a very quick revision has to happen. 2 revisions at least have to happen. So you give yourself a month and finish all the 13 topics revision. How do you check whether your revision is going in the correct direction or not? You have to start writing the mock tests almost immediately. So when we conduct a test series program here, there are topic-wise tests, sectional tests, and full course tests. So almost immediately you have to start doing the topic-wise test. So pick up 2 topics, look at the combination, give the test. Then go to a sectional test, prepare that section, done with it. And then in the later half of it, like the second month of it, you start writing the full course tests. With a lot of times I'm also suggesting to students that one day they should sit down and do 2 papers also, paper 1 and paper 2, because that is how ultimately it will also be questioned, So for students who are writing mains this year, the time is now. So right now they should take out their books and start looking at the combinations of the topics that they want to attempt, so that once the result is declared, when the other things also add up, your GS and your essay and everything, your optionals. Remember, optional contributes to 500 marks. So it's a lot of marks, and it can, if you have revised multiple times, you don't want all that to go down the drain. So take out the books now, start revising, and write tests. Get a feedback, try and improvise on your presentation together with accuracy. Anything new you want to do, this is not the time to do it. So only revise what you have prepared earlier. So if you've taken a decision of not doing a topic earlier, completely left it, don't do it even right now. It's okay. Just concentrate on the things that you have revised. Talking about students who are going to write the mains or prelims again next year. Well, for them, again, count the number of months that we have in this year. So about 7 months. It's almost June. So 7 months. And a revision must be done at least 2 to 3 times. So I'm just giving you an example. Of course, it can be tailor-made to people. But so let's say first 3 months, then 2 months, and then 2. So divide the 7 months into 3 plus 2 plus 2. So June, July, August, they should do the entire revision of the syllabus once. So take 3 months to revise it. How would you do that? Further bifurcate it. There are 13 topics, and 3 weeks would mean approximately 13 weeks, 13, 14 weeks, So each topic does not require 1 week. Some topics will require a lot of time. Abstract algebra is lengthier. Physics will take more time. Real and calculus would take a lot of time. But other topics, linear programming, ODE, PD, these can be done in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days also, at least the topics and so on. So you divide your preparation in such a way that I'm just giving you a sample. So you study for about 5 to 6 hours every day. Have 2 shifts, so morning shift and an evening shift. Do 2 different topics. Don't do just one topic, because that just becomes very monotonous and repetitive. And if you don't like that topic, then it becomes heavy. If you like it, then it happens very fast, but it does not reflect a true picture of how it's going to come in the exam. So pick up a topic that you're not so comfortable with. Pick up a topic that you're great at according to you. Do it in the morning or the evening shift. Divide it. So the syllabus is also moving. And you're also getting a taste of one difficult topic and one easy topic. Take 3 months to finish this. The way you have to revise is booklets followed by PYQs. So do the booklets thoroughly, then do the PYQs. The next 2 months, you write more tests. So there could be a year-long test series that you join. Again, somebody giving you a feedback about how your preparation is going, how much are you able to remember. And then you start writing sectional tests in the second revision that you take. So 2 months, the same thing has to happen. Again, the entire thorough revision has to happen. And then in the final revision, you can start writing full length tests, to really see if you have reached the level that is required to be able to sit in the mains. And then Jan, Feb, you can kind of continue your preparation a little bit. You can reduce the number of hours, but still be in touch with a few topics. So that makes about 3 to 4 revisions before you're giving prelims next year.
Also, ma'am, we are towards have discussed a lot of things about these things. I would like to ask you, how does the acumen that one develops in solving the multi-step complex maths problems, how do they actually help you in becoming a better administrator later? Because when you're opting for UPSC, you would aim to become an administrator. So how does that help? How does taking maths optional actually help an aspirant in becoming a better administrator?
This is very similar to the kind of question I have been asked very frequently as to why maths, how does it help? A lot of people would say that. How it helps in general, and as being a good administrator, is that breaking down a big problem into small steps which are doable. So how to analyze what a problem is. The biggest problem is the comprehension of the problem? What is the question asking you? And it's a huge problem. It's humongous. How do you break down into small parts which are solvable? It is like a piece of huge puzzle, those wooden puzzles we get. Like when you start making it, you have no idea what's happening, but you start with a particular piece, you put it, you pick up another one. So it's like a small bridge that you're making between what the question is asking and what your solution is going to be. So it helps you to develop the ability that is required to break down a big problem into small problems. And as an administrator, maybe delegate it to different people and then put them all together. You have to put it it's like how you thread, say, a necklace. You get different pieces and you all put them together. So that's an art, actually. It's really a skill that develops because you're doing maths. So one is, of course, the step-by-step logical breakdown of a problem and how you solve small problems. The other, I also feel, is a great sense of discipline and stamina, because maths does require a lot of stamina. At times you have to sit down for hours before you can decode a problem, and so it builds up the stamina, it builds up the perspective. And sometimes when there are multiple ways of doing a particular question, it also tells you how to think out of the box. So sometimes the questions are not to be answered directly. You have to take the help of some supporting lemma. So sometimes the solution of the problem can lie with some other issue. So it does give you a lot of perspective. It gives you an ability to build up your argument, because after all, what is any proof or solution? It is a bridge between what is given and what you want to show. So between what is your problem and what is your objective, how to build a bridge so that you can reach towards your destination. So that is a skill which is unparalleled, and it's something that a math student can really develop as part of their character, not just an exam, but it becomes their habit of how they look at any problem, So.
Okay, ma'am. Towards the end, I would like to ask you that what is one piece of advice you would like to give to a student who is willing to try maths optional per se, because he or she has a background in maths but is still a bit hesitant about should they opt for something that has more overlap with other GS papers, so it would be like an add-on to their value addition to their GS answers also and their optionals also. So what would you like to advise that kind of person?
See, I would say that please take a decision based on various factors. Please write down the pros and cons. Take an informed decision. Don't be in a haste, because any optional, and that is not just maths optional, but any optional would have a topic or two which you struggle at, a topic or two which you're okay at. So, when during the journey of the syllabus, you would always have doubts. And this UPSC journey is like that. At every step, one is doubtful. Should I give another attempt? Should I write this? Should I take this optional? From starting till end, there are a lot of decisions that one has to make. So someone who's hesitating, I would say there's still time. Please make an informed decision. But once you decide, depending on your flair, depending on your ability, not just to do maths, but also to put in the effort. Because just having a flair and I'm not putting in the effort is not going to work. So you would require to put in a lot of effort. Once you make that decision, please stay with that decision, because I can say this on behalf of any optional, that no optional person will come here and say, oh, my optional is very easy. There's nothing called easy or difficult. I mean, who would say that? Otherwise, what are we teaching if it is so easy? Everything is important. Yes, there is no overlap with GS, I agree. But a person who likes maths does not want it to also have any overlap, because they've had enough remembering. So maths does act like it's a luxury to be able to do a paper which is logical and does not require your memory as much as it requires the skill and the ability. But once you make up your mind, please stick with it for the duration of it, because it does reward you, but only if you are consistent, only if you are hardworking, and only if you are willing to trust the process, which is that there will be areas that you're weak at, and that will happen in any optional. It's not just maths, but there'll be your strength areas. You'll be able to identify them. You'll be, with the help of your teacher, work on your weaknesses. Yet identifying your strength will really give you an edge in the paper, because it's ultimately about showcasing what you know the best. And so decide, make an informed decision. But once you decide, be all in. Then don't have any ambiguity or any doubts about your choice, and then go ahead with it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really insightful talking to you. And I'm sure this podcast will actually help students understand maths optional preparation a lot better than what they would have previously thought of. Thank you.